Come on. I want to be deserves to be in the Alola region. Then again, I can't really beat the people in Japan going to this, so what if— what did I trip on this time? I tripped on so many things on the way over here, so what did I trip on this time? Oh. Verlisify's videos on hypertraining. This is gonna go well! So about a week ago, Verlisify put up 2 videos on the newest mechanic in Sun and Moon, being the newest hypertraining mode. It's saying that Nintendo has officially given up on cheaters and hackers. Granted, it is a bit of a stretch that he jumped to conclusions quickly, even though this is essentially a reward-like system. Also, do take note that before this video, a QR code from Maguna has shown that have it hold a silver border cap, which is an item necessary for hypertraining. Meaning border caps are the only method to get to use hypertraining. Just keep this in mind. This will be brought up later in the video. And before anyone complains, this video is not attacking Verlisify. This is not a random fan hating on a large channel. This is a Pokemon fan pointing out all of Verlisify's points in the videos he has on the subject, being a whole 2 videos. And hey, Verlisify, I know you're gonna play the victim card at one point during this video, or maybe at the end, it doesn't really matter. I know you're going to play it, and you can't deny it because you blocked so many users, including Margaret Common himself. I've seen his latest video. You cannot prove to me that does not make sense for Verlisify. So, with what little details of hypertraining as it is, let us begin.
I didn't realize it when I was making my video, but hypertraining is literally the worst thing to ever happen to Pokemon. And before all you hackers out there go and dislike this video, honestly, you guys need to be leaving a like. You guys win. Hackers have won on this day because the Pokemon Company with this decision has literally rolled over and said, we don't care. Hack, cheat, do whatever you want. We just do not want to deal with this anymore.
Mind showing any proof Nintendo has said this? Because trying to use reverse psychology on your viewers doesn't really help you in the first 30 seconds of this video.
And this has been shown, even though the rules state that even if your Pokemon has a legal ability, legal moves, legal stats, everything like that, it is a cheated Pokemon if it has been obtained through ginning, hacking, power saves, PK Hex, any game modification, even breeding hacked parents.
And we have yet to find any method of genning Pokemon into Generation 7. Seriously, the game hasn't been released yet and you're already jumping to conclusions? PK Hex, power saves, whatever the case, these methods were used in Gen 6, and we might not know they'll do well in Gen 7. Also, forget about hacked parents already, man, for Pete's sakes. Hacked parents do not matter in Generation 7, as the only Pokemon you can bring to Sun and Moon are Pokemon for the digital Red and Blue games. And if anything, we might as well wait for another official Pokemon app specifically designed to transfer Pokemon into 6th Gen to 7th Gen. Maybe Pokebank might still work, but who is to say really?
Is not allowed. The rules are very strict and clearly define what makes an illegal Pokemon, but since everyone cheats in VGC and everyone is using hacked Pokemon all the time, the Pokemon Company, instead of enforcing it, has given an excuse to hackers.
Everyone cheats at VGC. Care to provide evidence? Because clearly VGC is not the topic at hand here, neither is the fact that everyone is using hacked Pokemon that would ruin the fun of Pokemon. Also, hypertraining is not an excuse. Considering this is a new method for IVs, Nintendo has made it a lot easier to raise IVs on Pokemon at level 100. Yes, I get that you said that you know the Pokemon is level 100 in your next video, and your description as well, but you act as if this method applies to Pokemon under level 100. This is not going to go well.
Because it's nearly impossible, if not impossible, to trace items. So now what you can do is use an item and pop 31 IVs on any Pokemon. We have this Scrub Pikachu right here that has no 31 IVs, even like a 0 IV. It's a natural wild-caught Pikachu that has pretty bad stats, but with the use of one bottle cap, it's an absolute baller that has a 6 IV beast.
While you say bottle cap without the S, clearly means that there could be multiple kinds of bottle caps, which you'll explain much more later in the video, which bites you in the butt. Also, You do realize that it's gonna have to be raised to level 100 just to even get to use hyper training, right? Heck, there might be people even small enough to train the Pokemon into digital red or blue games to level 100, making them ready for hyper training when they transfer to Sun and Moon. Because whether or not people clone rare candies, it's just an easier method of getting to level 100. Nothing more, nothing less. Heck, allow me to play a clip from Felicia444's video on the same videos of yours, Verlisify.
Secondly, this is apparently encouraging / allowing cheaters to win since they can pack in items like rare candies and caps in order to reach level 100 and get their Pokemon perfected sooner. Regardless of what he has to say on the matter, this is a 5-second head start at best. Because in the end, the outcome is the exact same for both the legit player and the cheater. Sure, he gets it sooner, but why does that matter? The end result is what we should be looking at. And from this point, it's clear that both cheaters and legit players are on even footing.
Ergo, hyper training is a reward-like system, and when people can put in rare candies, the process is made easier and shorter. Besides, as of yet, we still have yet to find any way to obtain bottle caps. And yet here you are to say that people can clone the item very easily. Sometimes people might not want to grind for money to buy the same item over again, so perhaps cloning an item is not a method of preserving an item for later use. Stop trying to paint everyone with the same mindset of a hacker. Just because you think one way, doesn't mean it's the truth of the subject here.
So pretty much, the Pokemon Company has then turned around and given the middle finger to every single legitimate player out there, because all of your time, all of your work has been invalidated by a single item. And it makes breeding absolutely useless. That people have spent thousands of hours perfecting breeding, getting as good at it as possible, building up an absolute bank of having any kind of breedable possible. Like, there's a lot of breeders out there that have grinded to not get 6 IV Dittos. Like, if you have a 6 IV Ditto, it's hacked. All of the offspring of that Pokemon are illegal to use, but at the same time, the Pokemon Company refuses to enforce this at all.
Saying that if one has a 6 IV Ditto and jumping to the conclusion that it's hacked is just stupid on your part. For all we know, that Ditto must have had a lucky war when IVs was caught in the wild, we may never know. Also, proof that IV6 Dittos are hacked would be nice, but considering Verlisify's case, who doesn't provide evidence other than this Meguna part, makes this point kinda dumb, since he thinks any Sunny he finds in battle is hacked.
Ditto! Okay, and the opponents seem to have a pretty hacked team as well. My guess is last Pokemon is shiny as well, so let's go and take down this Johto Classic hacker.
Breeding is nothing more than hoping for RNG to work in your favor. Again, nothing more and nothing less. Up to pure RNG. Also, any offspring of the Ditto is illegal? Just because a Pokemon has 6 IVs does not mean it was hacked. It could have just been breeded normally. Plus, the fact that the game does not detect illegal 6 IV Pokemon proves you wrong yet again, Verlisify. Because there are often times where people have 5 to 6 IV Pokemon, and clearly they haven't been banned from going online due to the game. It's actually normal for a Pokemon to have 6 IVs when it's hatched from an egg. Even though it's, again, pure RNG. So stop saying that any potential Pokemon hatched from that supposed Ditto automatically means illegal. Because it's all part of the game, and not an error on Nintendo's part.
So that's what this is showing. What they're showing is, hey, as long as you catch your Pokemon in game, or at least hatch an egg at some point, you can hack a bottle cap in, we're not going to be able to detect it, and then you make your Pokemon a 6 IV boss, which is almost impossible. Like, breeding, it takes forever. It could take hours to get a 6 IV Pokemon, and 6 IVs are absolutely unnecessary because of natures. The nature is going to drop a stat, and it's usually going to be like a special attack or losing attack or something like that. So why would it need 31 attack IVs, which makes breeding a little easier. Now, there's a lot of 5 IV Pokemon out there. Same with soft resetting. Anyone that is soft resetting Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire just had hundreds of hours stripped away from them because soft resetting doesn't matter anymore. You pop a bottle cap on your legendary Pokemon. Now you just only have to worry about the nature. I think that that's the only thing that breeding will be good for right now.
And yet, considering the legendary level in Sun and Moon is yet to be seen, aside from Tapu Koko, you still need to raise it to level 100 just to use a bottle cap. Do you not understand this? Or are you really distancing your argument? Because from what I understand, you're just generalizing the long-term effect and not taking the time to consider what the possibilities could be.
So I missed!
Now, another weird thing is that we can see right here, this looks like the blue pentagon of the Alola region, maybe? So there's going to be like 7th generation legal Pokemon, which means all of your work in the 6th generation is now further invalidated because you're going to have to... Okay. I'm not saying this as confirmed, but this is strongly what it looks like. And that there will probably be like 7th generation only, or, you know, Alola legal only battles and tournaments and stuff like that.
And yet, according to friendly competitions, there's an option whether to use Alola region Pokemon or use the national Pokedex, allow for either pure Sun and Moon Pokemon or use ones transferred from Pokebank. While you can't predict the future, it's up to Nintendo to decide what tournament requirements are for 3DC tournaments. Also, further invalidated? Daycares are still going to be a thing, and as long as people can breed a level 1 Pokemon to 100, giving that well-trained Pokemon a bottle cap certainly doesn't feel hacked in the slightest. Sure, this mechanic has now thrown off the competitive side and figuring out new potential movesets for new and old Pokemon, but considering we jumped to conclusions earlier, saying that it hasn't been confirmed yet when you yet again jump the shark kinda makes your point invalid, buddy.
This might be like Pokemon's stand to reduce hacking. Like, maybe they're trying to do another reset. Alright, 6th generation didn't work, Pokebank still let through a lot of hacked Pokemon, and then breeding hacked parents became a thing, but that doesn't make sense. If Pokemon Company doesn't want you breeding hacked parents, then Pokemon Bank is still going to work with Pokemon Sun and Moon. That means you just have to rebreed to get 7th generation Pokemon, and then people use bottle caps instead of training. So, literally, all of the work in the last generation has been undone.
Technically not true, as Nintendo only confirmed that you can use digital Red and Blue games to transfer the Pokemon in those games only to Sun and Moon. Just because Pokebank is still a thing, doesn't mean that it's going to transfer 6th gen Pokemon easily until we have details on how transferring previous Pokemon work from X and Y and ORAS, so stop trying to think ahead while the game's not released.
At least with the 5th generation, like before Pokemon Bank, your 4th generation Pokemon were good, your 5th generation Pokemon were good, and back then, like the 5th generation, it took 10 times longer to breed your Pokemon to get the right Pokemon to work for you, and now we have Daycare Loop, Destiny Knot is much more efficient. Like, somehow cheating went up in the 6th generation. Like, many more people cheat and ignorantly think it isn't cheating than they did in the 5th generation, but it's easier. It's 10 times easier and quicker to breed, and even EV train. EV training through hordes is super fast. I think the thing is, since a lot of these hackers, they're either ignorant to the fact or they've accepted it.
For the 3rd time. Evidence! You do not have it! Also, while there is PowerShift codes for EVs, the 2 videos I've seen from my Google search are ones for X and Y and a video about X and Y and ORAS. And while I'm at it, the only reason that PKHex can stop working is the 9.5.0-23 update of the 3DS firmware, which can break the QR code exploit. Even then, there's a supposed update that people can easily do if they desired it. So it's not that hard for people who updated their 3DS on accident to continue exploring if they so desire. Why am I pointing this out exactly? I have no idea, but you'll note this has to show up later in the second video of Verlisify.
Because no matter how you look at it, it doesn't matter if Pokemon's legal stats or anything like that, is a cheated Pokemon. So they might hack in bottle caps, but then they could still probably cheat the EVs anyways, because what it shows is hackers don't want to do any work. They wanted something like Pokemon Showdown to where they can click a button and have a perfect competitive Pokemon to be used in battle.
And again, every Pokemon is built and tailored to their user's view of perfection, so nothing can be called hacked. So how do you win at Pokemon Showdown? By being the better battler! You have to be the one to make all the right moves and decisions. You have to be the one who's ready to win, because your Pokemon are just your weapons, and it's how you use them that determines the outcome. And you know what? In actual competitive Pokemon, it's the exact same. If you were to take a highly skilled competitive battler and a hacker with only semi-decent knowledge of competitive Pokemon, and you gave them both the same Pokemon, one being hacked and one being perfectly breeded, 9 times out of 10, it's the skilled battler that's going to win. Why? Because again, players win battles, not the Pokemon. The Pokemon are important, but to say that they give you any kind of advantage is strictly limited to how you build your team. There is no 2 ways around this fact, and it cannot be denied.
It doesn't matter if you make it easier with hyper training. pretty much all you're doing is removing any of the effort it takes to make legitimate Pokemon, and you're just encouraging cheating even more.
Considering the level requirement, it's essentially not cheating. People may see this as a rewarding system for raising Pokemon to the highest levels. People may not agree, but that's it. Not to mention, getting XP has changed since X and Y's release, and we all know this. So you could find hundreds of hordes or trainers and eventually raise that Pokemon to level 100 that way if one is like doing a challenge with the XP shell.
Oh, I missed!
Because what happens if I get a Pokemon off the Wonder Trade? Someone hacks in bottle caps, I get a Pokemon off the Wonder Trade, and then I take it off and put it in my items. Well, how are you supposed to know at that point?
The most logical guess is that the trainer of said Pokemon has already gotten access to Hyper Training and is more like spending his every load of bottle caps to line the load, cheated or not. You do know some people do give away Pokemon for a good reason, right? Because I personally Wonder Traded lots of Amogus that I put to people who may or may not have Amogus, since you can't find them in OS to begin with.
Does that mean every Pokemon you use with that stack of bottle caps is illegal? No.
Holy crap! I think the video just self-destructed itself in terms of Verlisify's points.
Oh, I missed!
Now, maybe the Pokemon Company has like some kind of super secret hack check that if you use PK Hex or Power Saves or whatever game modification that you choose to have, it'll be detectable. Like, honestly, with the 6th generation, you could have banned so many people. You could have caught so many cheaters because this Pokemon suddenly exists in your game without the use of Pokebank, without the use of anything, or Pokemon stats magically change between saves. Like, that would be super easy to detect and then flag as an illegal Pokemon.
Yeah, Japan managed to catch that problem easily and delayed Pokebank's release everywhere else. So, tell me again why detecting a hack should matter when easily stuff like that could happen? I mean, if they really wanted to, they could go out on hackers in general, but that would take quite a team to stand up for such things. Like Splatoon.
So maybe they're going to be doing something like that for the 7th generation, but then it still doesn't matter because you just get a cheating device, you hack a ton of items, which is easier to do, harder to detect, trade it over to your legitimate game, and there's no way of tracing that whatsoever. Now, I'm not here to tell you guys to cheat and to tell you guys that hacking is okay or give you a guide on how to hack. This is the truth. This is what hackers are going to do regardless. So I'm getting the information out there because within a matter of hours, minutes after the game coming out, or minutes after some kind of hack or cheat or exploit being released. You know, once the 7th generation games have some kind of PK Hex app or Power Save kind of download for it, everyone's going to know about this. Everyone's going to say, hey, you can hack the bottle caps and not get detected if you do this, this, and this. So hiding that information isn't really going to help anyone.
So, you tell me you're not promoting hacking while telling us the day Sun and Moon comes out, there's already going to be hacking in apps later on. Yet you yourself basically told anyone watching this is a potential method to hack the game.
I don't get it.
And that's just the sad truth about this. So, I mean, I'm not causing encouragement, but I'm just showing what the Pokemon Company has done. They refuse to take responsibility, especially like VGC. VGC has so many people that have admitted to cheating. Like in my videos, I've shown that there are Nationals top 4, top 3 winners and stuff that are using cheated Pokemon, and some of them openly admit to using Power Saves and PK Hex even in the tournament itself, and the Pokemon Company doesn't punish them, but it causes a lot of backlash from the legitimate players.
Oh look! A victim card has been played! Doesn't mean I can activate my trap card and turn that card back on you, Verlisify.
Verlis is upset about cheaters because he's a terrible battler, and the proof is in the pudding. But so what? He's terrible at Pokemon, who cares? People should be allowed to play Pokemon how they want. It's when they start sticking their noses in other people's playstyles that it starts to get out of hand.
Oh, I missed!
Like, I guess the only disclaimer is maybe this isn't the way that it works. We see that Magearna has a silver bottle clap. Like, Sarah B reported on it, and it shows that there's different potential bottle caps. Like, Magearna has a silver bottle cap. So that means it might boost your IVs by a set amount. Maybe there's bronze, gold, or maybe you can only use hyper training a certain amount of times per game.
Then what in the world was the point of the past 8 minutes of the video? You could have stated this isn't how it works, and yet now you decide to discuss that? This isn't the way it works. After all that you did before this? If that would be the case, then why would there be different bottle caps if you're only going to use it 6 times, you freaking floofwit? Yet when they introduced super training, there wasn't a limit to that. So what makes you think they'll instantly put a limit on a brand new mechanic? Sona Suffer.
So I missed.
Restriction like, oh, by the way, hyper-trained Pokemon can't be used in a competitive battle, not when they make it a normal game concept. It's just like super training in a way. You know, super training was meant to make EVs easier, but at the same time, super training actually takes longer than Horde level up. But there's this accessibility. They're not going to gate the accessibility, so this can really only look like some kind of cop-out to not deal with cheating anymore, and it's like the most upsetting thing ever. Every illegal player just got shit on for being a dedicated, loyal Pokemon fan, because anyone that hacks, anyone that cheats Pokemon, anyone that uses PK hacks, power saves, they are not a true Pokemon fan. They do not abide by the spirit of the games, and they go against the Pokemon Company's intentions. It's in the rules. If you're breaking the rules of the Pokemon Company just for your own devices, then that means you do not support the Pokemon Company. You do not support their decisions. You are not a honest fan of the Pokemon Company, but it looks like they don't care. They just don't want to deal with all these accusations of hatched Pokemon and cheating and stuff, so they're going to make it easier to cheat and just pretty much reward the hack. They're rewarding the dishonest players and hackers, and they're punishing the honest players.
Everyone who hacks is not a dedicated Pokemon fan. Hey, Verlisify, care to explain? Because I think a lack of reasoning for this proves otherwise. It might also help that the amount of dislikes on your video clearly doesn't help you. And considering the point I'm seeing in hyper training, I'm clearly dedicated to pressing the higher ranking button, since you're generalizing the mechanic 9 minutes ago. So saying that it's going to get you more dislikes than anything, bucko.
So I missed.
And the Pokemon Company doesn't care, while also telling people to play legitimately. I don't understand.
Maybe you don't understand because we do not know the requirements of the mechanics, you don't. Anyways, that video is done. Except for the fact that he has made another video on the same topic that very same day.
I just finished recording the video, but I made a realization at the end of the video that needs to be the start of this video as to why hyper training is absolutely useless, and that's time. A lot of people are saying that the biggest complaint about IV breeding is that it takes so much time and that hyper training will reduce the amount of time, thus encourage more players to be legitimate, but that's not going to happen.
Because breeding, as I stated earlier, revolves around a lot of RNG. Nintendo is essentially boiling down any process of that and making sure that by having a level 100 Pokemon and using the maximum body cap we're able to obtain, we can have a total of 6 IVs without having to breed or release Pokemon constantly. I know I should have said this in this video, but come on! What is even the point of this video if you're making a 25-minute session of the topic you've talked about on the same day?
Pikachu is level 100. You need a level 100 Pokemon to hyper train, so that's going to take hours right there.
And here you recognize the level limitation. It won't take hours unless that Pokemon has been transferred from the digital red and blue to Sun and Moon, or by using a lot of their candies, or just grinding the liver heck out of whatever potential XP grinding method they'll have in Sun and Moon. If you said this in the first video of yours, then you would have a point. But since you didn't, why bother pointing this out now?
That the time it takes to IV breed a 5 IV Pokemon is going to take less time than it takes to get the Pokemon to low 100 and whatever method it takes to acquire a bottle cap. That if a bottle cap is in any way time consuming, it's just going to be faster than IV train, so people are just going to hack anyways.
It's most likely we're going to receive bottle caps from a store, like most items. We don't have to pointlessly travel the Alola region to find random Pokeballs hoping they have bottle caps for Verlisify. We just don't. We're using in-game money to buy things for hyper training regardless, so what's the point here?
So I missed.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and I want to make a follow-up video to my hyper training, responding to comments since a lot of people do not understand that this is the worst thing to happen to Pokemon.
Well, mostly because you are wrong. You jumped to shock way too much in that video, and I'm tempted to leave a dislike here to spite you for how wrong you really are.
Also, when it comes like the dislike ratio on the video, I've been seeing a lot of comments saying I'm wrong because lots of dislikes, but that really doesn't make any sense. If you're just disliking this video, it doesn't change fact. It doesn't change what's the circumstances of what's going on here. And please, if you're disliking, unsubscribe.
Wait, what?
You are of no value to me, your negativity is not welcome on this channel, and if you're just like here to only subscribe and dislike a video, then your opinion doesn't matter at all, because if you're going in with negative intentions, that's not going to change my content in any way.
Are you kidding me? You basically told your audience to screw themselves and not subscribe to you simply because they dislike your video? Wow. Cut me some slack, man. Cut me some slack. You really put yourself on the highest stand of all time. Now surely people will start making more likes to your video because of that. Spoiler, only the drones of Verlisify do that.
So I missed.
Here we go. Personally, I think this feature was meant to make it easier on the few legitimate players and make cheating unnecessary because obtaining Pokemon with good IVs is easier now anyways. This comment, and anyone that agrees with this comment, misses the point entirely. That the whole thing about my video is that we shouldn't be rewarding hackers and we shouldn't be letting them slide, because that's all it does. All this does is say, you know what, hackers, go do your thing. We're just going to try to catch up the legitimate players. That doesn't make any sense.
Nintendo is not rewarding hackers. They're rewarding the player, which could apply to anyone, a chance to use hyper training, so they could potentially have all 6 IVs on their Pokemon. Again, using the maximum bottle cap we could have. Holy crap! Is it that hard to ignore the point of hyper training, Verlis? Nintendo can care for the fanbase much like Konami cared about Yu-Gi-Oh players before the crap that came along with the Metal Gear series.
That we should be trying to punish and remove hacking instead of level the playing field.
You know what? Leveling the playing field makes sense to trying to remove hackers. While yes, there were awesome players who hacked Splatoon, that shows that they care for the people who are playing online. Things like playing as an Octolink and changing colors online, stuff like that got people banned. That's how much Nintendo cared about Splatoon. Sure, they tried with Pokemon, but that doesn't mean they gave up very easily for Verlisify.
And that's like what all this support effectively says, you know? Agreed, they're making it easier for honest players, not rewarding hackers. Well, this is absolutely wrong, because they are rewarding hackers by making it easier to cheat.
Making it easier to cheat does not equal rewarding hackers. As gaming stuff said in that picture, it makes competitive way more accessible for casuals and the like. So you got to consider the fact that most people might not be into competitive and the people who might want to try it. This is essentially Nintendo's only way to introduce them to that subject for Verlisify, something I think you would most likely enjoy if you stopped jumping the gun and dropped the conclusion you floofing floofwit.
And then not get detected since it's going to be through an item instead of modifying a Pokemon directly, which is going to make it a lot easier on hackers. And also the thing about hackers is that they're not going to change their ways over this idea. I think I have some comments about that, so I'll discuss that when we get to there.
Keep this in mind, folks. This might bite them later on.
So I missed.
It's not like freaking pressing a button and then immediately becoming a challenger tier in League of Legends, or becoming a professional CSGO player, or anything like that. No, it demands hard work and sacrifice, and I feel every game, even a game based for children like Pokemon, is no different. Like, all games should be seen universally competitive, because that's why it's called competitive. It separates from the casual, and I think that this is just the wrong train of thought, that you have to sacrifice, you have to work harder, you have to put more effort to reach that competitive tier. If you refuse to IV train and you refuse to put the hours into work, then you deserve to lose in a competitive environment where other people have sacrificed and then dedicated to the game, which kind of goes back to this.
Which, as I said, makes no difference other than the fact that it's based on the players. It is the players that win battles, not Pokemon. I'm starting to think you might not enjoy Sun and Moon if you keep this mindset. I might need to relax my voice after this. Perhaps some dinner will soften my voice that these videos brought upon me.
They're making it easier for honest players. No, they literally just screwed over every honest player by doing this, or at least the dedicated ones.
I know asking for evidence isn't going to happen at one point, but do explain for Verlisify that you're the one doing this video, and you're the one who's supposed to bring up evidence. So how is it screwing over actual people? Time to eat a freaking skip sandwich.
So I missed.
Things and stuff. I went out and spent a couple hours to get a 5 IV Ditto. So that means all of that work was wasted, since now I use a bottle cap and I get a 6 IV Ditto for my breeding. Not that breeding matters anymore anyways.
It's only one additional IV for this. It's not that big of a difference, because breeding will still matter, because it's a core aspect of Pokemon that will never be removed. Do I really need to spell this out for you?
So there's ways of doing this. Like, this is the out. Like, I think Pokemon just copped out instead of, you know, trying to establish, hey, like they have, like, here's the thing. Pokemon has established for the last 6 generations, for 20 years, well, maybe not 20 years, but, you know, last 10 years with serious competitive play, that you need to work hard to get competitive teams going, and because of all the backlash, you know, there's more cheating now than ever. Over a majority of the people in the Pokemon Pokemon community cheat. Most of the people that play VGC are using hacked Pokemon in some way, whether they're cloned, which is still hacking, bred with hacked parents or anything like that. Like, almost everything is just filled with cheated and hacked Pokemon. So instead of trying to reduce that, Pokemon's just rolled over and said, we're either going to make it super accessible for everyone, and we don't even care about hackers anymore.
Again, evidence of hacked Pokemon would be nice right about now, but since you can't really prove that, the point is nothing more than a rehash if you want to get rid of hacking, when clearly people have done so since the day it was available. So it's up to the person in question whether to make things easier or not. Again, stop trying to paint everyone in the same mindset for this. You're clearly not winning me over anytime soon.
So I missed.
So, completely agree. I like Verlis Bomb 9 to people that don't use illegal abilities, moves, or stats, but this doesn't matter.
If this doesn't matter, then why did you bring it up in this third video? Explain, Verlisify! Explain! As Izanami2442 said, he can care less if people hack. Some people do not have the time to breed the perfect Pokemon, so they hack to make things easier to get the competitive Pokemon they desire. Also, Watio Autism said that Game Freak is trying to help honest players stand up to hackers better. While we're on that point, I agree with what Marshall says, because no matter how hard people hack a Pokemon's stats or another, it is still a 100% legal Pokemon according to the game. Now, I'm not saying hacking is encouraged, mind you. You are spouting this nonsense over to people who will understand this better when we get more info. So saying that these comments don't make sense really makes me think you're just underestimating the reasons behind these comments.
You can care less if they hacked Pokemon because they don't have time to breed the perfect Pokemon. That's wrong. This is absolutely wrong. The current state of the Pokemon rules say that that's a hacked Pokemon regardless, and they shouldn't be trying to support that, because that's all this is doing is enforcing this mentality. It's like, cool, now other people are allowed to hack because I can use a bottle cap, and it's like I made my Pokemon just as fast.
Actually, yes, it is true. Take me for example. I don't have all the time in the world to breed because I have YouTube, 2 potential games to make, and I have a life. I don't have time to breed a perfect Pokemon just for competitive use. If anything, I'm glad hyper training exists, because now I can have a powerful Pokemon and essentially build up my own team based off a really strong and thought out moveset. Do you see what I'm getting at here, or are you just that ignorant to try and debug my reasoning? In fact, before I skip most of the video to save my sanity, Silesia says that the company didn't mean to make cheating easier, but to make breeding easier to set the balance between cheaters and breeders, and that cheating is easier and that cheating is just an effect they didn't think through. While I agree that they didn't think this through, it's actually a good point that they didn't think it through, because regardless, people are going to have level 100 Pokemon. Just to use Hyper Training, just to use, say, Golden Bottle Cap, to max out the IVs of that strong Pokemon. Cheating to have a lot of rare candies is a method to avoid having to go and waste hours just to grind. While the Pokemon might not get many EVs out of it, it's still something Nintendo didn't think through, and it's most likely what people would do when the games are released to the world. Also, explain how there isn't going to be breeders and people who are just gonna farm for bottle caps. We don't know how to get them yet, and as I said many times before, breeding is still a thing that Nintendo ain't removing anytime soon. And as I stated earlier, we could potentially get them from a store. So just stop jumping the gun and stop concluding that there isn't going to be any daycare in Sun and Moon for this. I'm really getting tired of having to point that out for you, much like my voice.
So I missed.
Now the thing is, we don't know everything about how it works, but no matter how the bottle cap system plays out, it's a loss, and I'll talk about that at some point in the video. But just in case...
Then if we don't know how bottle caps will work, then why bother making this video? Oh, and also remember that part. I might bite him later, like the bite of 1997. Wait, I didn't mean...
This just makes the game more easy. Who wants to breed for 4 days? This goes back to the mentality of competitive. The game isn't supposed to be easy. Competitive Pokemon is not supposed to be free. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be something that requires sacrifice. It's the competitive level.
Referring to my point earlier, Anime for Life is saying that people might not want this challenge and sacrifice that comes to making a competitive Pokemon. They also stated that if you want a legitimate 5 or 6 IV Pokemon, you can do so without cheating. There we go, max level to acquire the use of a bottle cap, along with the fact that there could be different kinds of bottle caps as seen with the QR code Meguna, makes things so much easier for newcomers in the series to get into competitive play if they so desire.
So I missed.
So now you can't use hatch Pokemon Sun and Moon. So if you want legitimate 5V stuff, now you have to do it without cheating. Wrong. Again, cheating is going to be harder to detect.
Again with the cheating logic, Verlisify. Cheating rare candies is nothing more than a method to reach level 100 without spending hundreds of hours to grind for a ton of XP. Just because you activated your logic card doesn't mean it can't be reversed to be used on you, so I could question your reasoning. How many more times do I have to skip again? Because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot in this video alone.
Easier method of legitimate training in the game will bring more players to the competitive scene. Again, this doesn't really matter because a lot of comments I've seen are trying to support that, oh, by doing this, they're going to make more people buy the game.
And what if that happens to be true? That'll just prove you wrong, Verlisify. It won't show that people are ignorant, it'll show that people will eventually accept this new method and go with it instead of the previous old method. If they happen to go back to Gen 6, then maybe they have to go with the old strategy. But again, since this is a new feature, it's better to wait and see, rather than debunk and tell Nintendo to remove a new mechanic. Also, I love the fact that you used the people cheat at 3GC logic again, considering before these videos, it's been said you round starred and failed majority. So stop trying to bring up irrelevant details to the table, my boy. If anything, the border caps are there to make IV handling a bit easier and not as tedious as it was before, where it was up to RNG in the past games, including remakes.
Oh, I missed!
It doesn't, you don't mind losing the ground for the new method, that's casual behavior. Wanting freebies to play at the highest level is casual.
Care to explain, almighty Verlisify? Oh well, you probably won't reply anyways. What's more with the skip sandwich?
Oh, I missed!
Normally I like you a lot, now it looks like you're just trying to find something to complain about. This makes it easier for people to play VGC, they're trying to make their game available. The game is already available, anyone can go and play Pokemon. It's not like a multiplayer game where you get crushed no matter how hard you work or something like that. With Pokemon, you're going to win a battle at some point, no matter how unoptimized your team is, no matter how bad you are. Because that's just how it is. There's so much diversity and so much stuff that there's no gating.
Once again, it's up to the players that win battles. Preparation does help, but you gotta understand that what your opponent does is a lot more different than any opponents you fought in the past. They might not do the same thing as your opponent before. So regardless, you're gonna have to step up your A game in order to make the best plan, and to make sure you win the round at hand. McCain's comment does make sense. He or she normally liked you, but after the day you uploaded the hyper training rant, they felt you were just trying to find something to complain about, and to them, they find it easier to play 3DC thanks to this mechanic. They don't like genning, but they say you just want to complain, and that you just like it. Most of the comments you saw are like this. They give a reason, and you try to debunk it like a scared little kid. Most people like the mechanic, so you should just go with the times, and wait to try it for yourself. I know it'll save me my troubles of getting 6 IV Pokemon when Sun and Moon comes out. Besides, hyper training takes hundreds and thousands of hours from regularly trying to breed for a normal 5 or 6 IV Pokemon and making it into items so that the highest level border cap you can easily make it 6 IVs. I don't understand why I have to keep repeating this point, Verlisify. I honestly don't. You just don't look at the good side of hyper training. You people do see it as a good thing. Also, that one comment by Automixin is just speculation. Why would hyper training take an hour when we're literally using an item to boost Pokemon's IVs? So why would I take an hour to do so when the effects could be instantaneously? Which it could be. Man, it really is a good thing I bought so many skip sandwiches. I might have enough to get through with my sanity intact.
Oh, I missed!
Also, you need to get your Pokemon to level 100. So that's going to encourage further hacking, that you can either generate a ton of rare candies and then level your Pokemon all the way up that way, and unless they can detect using multiple rare candies, which might come off as a sign of suspected cheating or something like that, it's pretty bad.
Oh look, a point I already brought up multiple times. I still highly doubt they're going to detect something like items, because in that matter, the game would detect there's something wrong with this many Ultra Balls, say 99, even if you do state that you legitimately bought them from a Pokemon. See, I don't think that kind of logic would flow well with a Pokemon, and it's probably why they don't detect items that way anyways. Probably to save everybody the sanity of having that to be potentially banned for just buying so many items.
And even then, like daycare loop. So, if they have a daycare loop, maybe it'll be easier to get like level 100s or something like that, because you can, Mega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you can get 4 Pokemon level 100 in a day through just holding up on the D-pad, so that already takes a lot of time right there, just gets a level 100. But if you have to actively grind these Pokemon level 100, it's just giving an avenue for people to complain about, going, oh, I don't want to make all my Pokemon level 100. That's 30 Pokemon to get to level 100. That's going to take days. Oh, hey, we're in the same argument now. Because that's the thing about breeding. breeding takes weeks to make a full team. So that means it's going to take days to get a hyper-trained Pokemon, or potentially even weeks, depending on how much you can grind to that level 100. It's not going to work no matter how you look at it. And that's why it's not going to stop hacking, and it's not going to make more legitimate players. It's just going to make people want to hack more, because you have to hack to make the most out of hyper training, since it doesn't work that way.
A Pokemon will not get to level 100 in a day. It may take multiple days, mind you, maybe even weeks, months, who's to say really? Again, depending on the method they may provide us with in this game, that will all depend. Going ahead, since I'm going to be skipping a majority of the video here again, random Asian guy, I apologize deeply, says that they're trying to make competitive easier for younger people. Not that it doesn't help with cheating, but they do have to appease the demographic that doesn't pertain to just VGC as well. You do try to debunk this data, so I don't understand why you're trying.
Oh, I missed!
I think they're just trying to make competitive easier for the younger crowd, but the younger crowd shouldn't, like, it's not hard as it is. Like, once you understand IVs and EVs and stuff, I mean, in 20 minutes of video on my channel, you can understand everything that you need to know about breeding, IVs, and EVs, and it's not that hard. It just takes a lot of time and dedication, and kids have a lot of free time.
A lot of free time, eh? Not unless they have school!
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm already aware that Verlisify might have pointed this out, but getting a better education is a lot more better than trying to breed for months for a competitive Pokemon prior to Sun and Moon.
Oh, I missed!
I mean, 10 years ago, I knew what EV training was, and I had a rough idea what IV breeding was in the 4th generation. 4th generation was like 50 times harder to understand this stuff. So now the resources are very clear-cut and super easy, and I wouldn't be surprised if I wouldn't say 8, maybe 9-year-old could easily learn how to EV train and IV breed without too much complications. Like, once you do it enough, once you practice, because that's the whole thing about competitive gaming, is that there's practice and dedication, that's it. So, no, they're not losing a huge demographic.
Because, chances are, they're going to look it up on the internet. Most preferably, YouTube, and look up videos on it. Some people can't be smart enough to take the time to do the research. Yet Verlisify won't be smart enough to acknowledge his own mistakes and flaws, so he plays the victim card every time he gets attacked. But I'm just trying to keep my sanity intact for the longness of this video at hand. Since I'm going to be skipping some more with the help of my lovely bot skip sandwiches, I'm going to make note that Verlis shows Black Ops 1856's comment about making the game a lot more easier for casual players, and making it more fun so you can actually battle and have a chance, as opposed to having to deal with hacked Pokemon and never being able to win because of people who are much more better than them. So now, people can actually do other things than breed for Pokemon for weeks on end, just to get one perfect IV stat. Verlis goes on to say that you'll also make it harder against legitimate players, but the same legitimate players could have also used hyper training way more than the person they're fighting against. I'm just speculating at this point. The game hasn't ever been released yet. Who is to say? Bringing up Neon Light to Doomhog, hooray, Sonic recolors, says that YouTubers have to do it because they have videos to make, and they can't spend days on end trying to catch certain Pokemon or waiting to get eggs and hatching them. Then goes on to say that Verlisify needs to think about what he needs to say, because he could end up causing hate to people, and that he doesn't need to get hate from people. Verlis goes on to say that all YouTubers use PK Hex, which is a stupid statement, says they are not going to stop using PK Hex and hacked Pokemon, when he clearly does not realize that many people are either streaming to hatch shiny Pokemon or potentially for competitive uses. He goes on to say that if hyper training as it is, then hackers aren't going to convert until it invalidates the whole idea behind hyper training. Man, I spewed so much information, I don't think I could take it any longer. Please tell me one of these skip sandwiches will actually get me to the end of this nonsense.
Oh, I missed!
This feature in particular looks like it was created for people that want to use hidden power in their movesets. Actually, this doesn't make any sense, because hidden power is based off of IVs, so would it change the hidden power of the Pokemon to go through hyper training?
Who's to say that it could be the possibility? I don't know. We just have to wait to find out. But with the nonsense that you're saying, that doesn't seem to be the case, mighty Verlisify. Oh, and with the next comment Verlis shows is one of the ones that he actually supports, and saying that his faith is restored in humanity. Hey, buddy. I wouldn't get that excited if I were you. Since I am going to be skipping a few comments, I'd like to point out Lagalot 101's comment. Basically, he says, why do you like to spend days to build a single legit competitive team? Having legendaries and unbeatable Pokemon can't become veritably impossible to use in competitive play without cheating? Why would Verlis be okay with having to suffer through that? I have no idea. They go on to say, depending on the implementation, hyper training could eliminate those issues largely, or even entirely. They dislike having to spend so much time to build a team that's possibly not even fit for competitive play, anyways, and saying that it doesn't sacrifice depth. Making your competitive scene much more accessible is always a good thing, and if that hyper training is implemented well, we'll do just that. Verlis, as usual, goes on to spew crap about the comment and moves on to the next. What's more with the skipping of the comments?
So ein Mist!
And then I have this comment from Overwatch. Like, why is it so hard for the Pokemon Company to come down on cheaters with an iron fist?
Things like playing as an Octolink and changing colors online, stuff like that got people banned. That's how much Nintendo cared about Splatoon. Nintendo did try the hardest for Verlisify, but the majority of the problems was on Splatoon. Those people were called out upon and were banned. See, Nintendo does care about one franchise, yet they're trying to keep Pokemon an active franchise, seeing as there was many games in the series. Also, I got much from Overwatch? How's that related to the video? My appetite for getting better, so please let this skip sandwich finally be the end of the video.
So ein Mist!
But in Pokemon, everyone's okay with it. I just do not understand that mentality. That's what I have for this video today.
And that's the end of the video. Thank God it was the end. I think it would have thrown up those previous skip sandwiches when in public. Ugh. Honestly, Verlisify, I have no idea why you decided to make 2 videos about it, especially when the game's not even released. It's bad enough I had to sit through this while you constantly spew at, "It's cheating, Nintendo shouldn't have made this," when I can flip that opinion and say that you need to have the patience to find out if your opinion is true or not. I'm not saying you can't be wrong, I'm just saying if you want to make your opinion solid, you need evidence. And despite one evidence being that QR code of Magirna we brought up in this video, I highly doubt the 3GC factor despite everything else before these 2 videos. I hate to be a broken record at this point, but you need to understand when to accept criticism, and stop trying to be the high horse of the Pokemon community. After all, when you did say that YouTube needs to target unnecessary videos, and claiming that yours is important for no reason, you clearly don't know what you did there, because in that regard, all YouTube videos are unnecessary, including yours. Say, remember those 2 points where I said it'll bite him later in the second video of his? He oddly enough brought those up again, which is weird because I swore he said he'll talk about them later, yet never did and continued to be commented and continued to spit crap on them with the exception of 3. I already know you're gonna block me at the end, Verlisify, and you can't deny it. I'm gonna know eventually if you did so, Verlisify, so the psychology's on you this time. While present me is unsure if you played the victim card at one point in the video or not, the future me can figure out if you did so, depending if you want to respond to this video. Then again, I highly doubt I am a small channel after all. So, I really have any advice for you, knowing you'll just block me in the end, but just deal with the criticism, Verlisify, and stop trying to make yourself the greater victim here. I may be a small YouTube channel to you, but I can certainly care less if you send your mindless drones to attack me just for this video alone. I said all I could here, and that does it for me, because many videos are already filling up, Verlisify. Unless you stop and accept your mistakes and flaws, you probably won't continue to stop until you quit YouTube entirely. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be heading back to my house, seeing as these videos wasted enough time as it is, and it's already getting dark. I'll see you all next time, whether it be in Xenoblade Chronicles X, or into a new playthrough of mine. Till then, good luck on your Pokemon journey, and always ignore the great Verlisify.
So ein Mist!
Heck, I even used Active Replay in the days of Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, and I'm still a dedicated fan, regardless if I don't watch the anime. So, saying that is going to get you more dislikes than anything, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. What in the world is a fuck you?